So, so this is Steve. I'm Jeff. You heard the question. Had a minute to think about the process by whatever your belief is, and
I'll let you repeat it.
Okay, so what do you think happens after we die or after this life?
Right.
And how did you get to that? Whatever you believe about it, how did you get there?
How to get there?
Yeah.
It's an interesting question. I've definitely given it some thought over the years. I was raised Catholic, so confirmed and all that. I don't practice anymore.
And with that, did you go to like Catholic school and high school? Things
For
like
a
that?
little bit. Went to Catholic school for a short time. I was from a small town. The education wasn't up to par, so I was put in public schools. Because at the time they were doing a better job. And this is a long story in that sense, but little time in Catholic school, most of it in public. As far as the question goes, what's who I believe? I'll say this: I would like to believe that there's something else, that there's something more.
Yeah.
But the rational part of me fears that it is just ashes to ashes, dust to dust. That this is our opportunity to do the best that we can. As far as how I feel I got there, just trying to think of things in a way that is rational and logical, I guess, in the sense that I can only know what I know, and that while having faith and believing in something is great and amazing, it's hard for me to do that without like seeing it or without being like I don't know how to put it.
Being able to prove it, maybe, or
prove it, I guess, but that's maybe just thinking in terms of science and things like that. Like but I do. I don't think there ever could be proof. I don't think that it's something that is tangible.
I'm with you there.
And it's just it's you either believe or you don't, and maybe your opinions can change over time. Mine might change over time. I feel like all things.
Was there ever a time when you would say you did believe, I'm going to heaven, or there's a heaven and a hell, or I believe in God?
I said those things in terms of like having been raised to say those things.
Right. Yeah.
I must have been born a skeptic. I remember my mother said that I never believed in Santa Claus.
Okay.
From the moment I heard about him. So I think that's just my nature.
Yeah.
But
actually, a few days ago, I talked to someone who said they stopped believing in God when they stopped believing in Santa Claus.
That's
it was
interesting.
Like the same day.
Wow.
Which was weird.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I don't know. I guess I've just always been show me, prove it. But I mean, like,
what do you think that would look like?
I don't know. I don't know if there's any. I mean, like, I guess it's all in your interpretation of like what you think, what you've been told it is. If there's anything, I mean, like, and this is, I guess, approaching it from like a science perspective again, is like, if there's anything, I don't even know if there's a consciousness. It could just all be energies that are moving, flowing through whatever. Like, I mean, like, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to believe that. I think it's a lot of man's ego to say that there's a big bearded guy in the sky that's we're made in his image, blah 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 blah. But ultimately, whether there is an afterlife or not, being afraid isn't good. And but if fear is what it takes for someone to live a moral life, then better to be afraid. Than to not live a moral life.
Yeah.
Which is weird, but...
So, would you say you have a fear of the possibility that, oh yeah, there is a God and we're going to be accountable to him?
Fear of death.
Fear of death.
I absolutely do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. And you want more of life, it sounds like.
Yeah,
you'd like to believe,
Yeah, well, yeah.
You're a lover of life.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, I'm
cool.
enjoying what I'm doing here. And,
Yeah.
and I don't, want to, like, live a good life and all that other stuff. But at the same time, too, like, maybe it's fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
Who's to say?
Yeah.
Because, honestly, like I said, I don't.
Do you think fear can ever be a good thing?
Like I said, it can be. It can be healthy. Like I said, if it takes fear for somebody to do the right thing because they're afraid of the outcome, then that's good.
Yeah.
That is good.
I mean, if you're walking along the edge of a cliff,
I mean,
fear is healthy because you don't like do things that you like carelessly,
right,
or whatever.
Right. There's consequences. Yes. If you and fear helps you.
Now, I'm assuming you don't believe, like, along with there's no afterlife, you don't believe in God, right? Or,
I mean, again, it's one of those things where I guess that's what agnosticism, where you just don't know, so you don't really take a stance, essentially.
And I want to encourage you on that because I feel like a lot of people are atheists, so just come out and say I'm atheist.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're saying there is no God. In other words, I know everything.
Well, right.
But agnostic, you're humble enough to be able to say, I just don't know.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, 100%. Like I don't know. I lean towards probably not. But again, you can't know. No one can know. No one can know until the moment you're dead. And once you're dead, you can't turn around and tell anybody. Yeah. So there's no way to know. So everyone who doesn't believe should at least say that much. Yeah. And back to like being afraid of if there is something. I don't feel that I've lived a life that would damn me, so I'm not afraid in that sense. You know what I mean? Like if there is heaven and hell, I'm pretty confident that I've done okay. Yeah. At the very least, I'll hang out in the waiting room for a while. But I mean.
Now, is there anything else in your life that you do that you can't know how it's going to turn out, or you do it anyway, even though you don't know 100% that
it matters?
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, because you're saying I don't know, so how can I believe in it?
Right.
And I'm just wondering, like, how much does a person need to know? Like, how does that look? Is it, like, even in science, which is more empirical, it's like we have past experiments and we expect the pattern to continue,
Right. But there's no guarantee it will.
Right, and they're discovering more about...
Things are constantly in flux and changing.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I don't want to say that, I want to believe that, for an example in what's happening in society right now, is I want to believe that this earth is round. I don't want to believe that it's flat.
Oh,
so things in that nature, like in that sense... Like, yeah, sure, evidence can be presented that can be compelling, whether it's true or not. And then there is, yes, a level of belief involved in science and everything else. Because unless you are actually in that same sense of what I'm talking about, and like knowing and doing, it's like if I'm not the one actually doing the experiment.
Yeah.
Then how can I?
I
have to trust somebody.
Trusting the responsible people,
right? That have done what they need to do and make sense of it. Yeah. So I think in our everyday lives, there's constantly. Yeah, we're
trusting that there's reliable people.
Yeah,
in positions that can give us accurate information. I think with the world being flat, we can look at an eclipse and see the circle of the Earth on the moon or whatever, and figure it out for ourselves.
Right. A lot of it seems like it's like they figured this out hundreds of years ago. Why is this a conversation again now? But again, it's about.
I personally, as a Christian, I personally believe people in that camp are out to. I don't know, like whether they're purposely trying to do it or not,
Yeah.
they're making people of faith look foolish, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
it's like, man, I don't want anything to do with it.
It's shining a bad light. It really is. It's like this. Yeah. I mean, I don't know where they're coming from either. It might have been a couple of people that were having a goof.
They're making a lot of noise.
And all of a sudden, everyone's like,
seeing it.
That kind of makes sense. Doesn't
Yeah,
make sense.
conspiracy theorists and stuff.
Yeah. And I'm not comparing religion to conspiracy theories at
Right.
all.
Well, a lot of people do,
but,
and there's
you know,
a lot out there, and I believe, like, that it's possible to have faith, but a reasonable faith.
Yeah.
In other words, to have reasons for your faith and evidence, and not have to know 100%.
Sure.
But the more I experience the Christian life, the more I'm sure. And it began with being presented with a whole lot of very compelling evidence, you know.
Things that can't be explained but happen for reasons.
Yeah, that, and just like learning the history of the Bible and where it came from, and the history behind the events in the Bible, things like that.
Right.
So, and what I was getting at is, like, you get in a car, or more like you get on an airplane. It's kind of an act of faith, because you're trusting, like, you're kind of like eyeing that pilot. If he didn't have a uniform on, if he just had an old raggedy t-shirt.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's what he looks like the moment he gets off that plane. But
right.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of faith going to flying. I'm not
I won't
lie, not a big fan.
So I guess I'm
of
just
flying.
trying to say, like, we operate by faith, reasonable faith, very reasonable faith, and with a lot of evidence for, I would say, the vast majority of the things we do, really. If you think about it that way, because I guess I just feel like it's I don't want to say it's not like an easy answer, just to say, well, I believe in science, I don't believe in faith, and I just think that they're mixed, you know?
There's connection there. There certainly is. Religion's so tricky. It's just one of the, and there's so many different ones, there's so many takes, and so much stuff we've forgotten.
Yeah. So science kind of operates empirically, which is like you can measure things,
and as long as you document it and there's a record, you can kind of.
And then rationally, like, it's epistemology. How do we know what we know, right? So science is more empirical. Things like beauty, or values, or faith, religion. Maybe even things in the, like science. How can science run experiments on things that happened way in the past that are unrepeatable, or even like a miracle in the present, which basically we're saying somehow a supernatural force has defied the laws of nature. And do I think I can cause it to happen again? I don't think I can. It's more the belief that in this one incident there was a miracle that we can't explain,
Right.
And so science says it's got to be replicable,
Right. And they will at least make attempts, and with modern day things, I would assume, to try and whether prove or disprove. That's really not the case, but to try and find the truth of it.
Yeah, or just find more evidence.
Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah. That's the best way to put it.
Because I would say there's evidence against Christianity, where I probably should pay attention to it. And there's evidence for it, And in my mind, the evidence for it is more compelling.
Sure.
But a lot of that is experiential,
Right.
Right. So, have you ever had any kind of spiritual, any kind of, like, I don't want to say spiritual experiences, but anything that makes you think there's another realm other than just the physical realm?
I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, ghost stories can be fun and things like that, but I don't know. I don't know if I've ever encountered anything that I could quantify as like, there might have been there's an unexplained event here and there potentially.
Yeah.
But nothing that there's other explanations at the same time.
Possibilities.
Too. Yeah, it was like things that I could swear that no, that's not what happened, but then again, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it was it's just one of those things. But as far as like something on more of like spiritual, like, I don't know. Honestly, I don't think so, because I don't think my mind works like that.
And I mine doesn't either. I don't think, or maybe I just am not tuned into it. As a Christian, I feel like I've experienced a lot of things that I can only account to, say that God did it, but it's more like the right thing happened at the right time, where anyone could say, well, that's just coincidence, and it's just like, man,
it's a lot of coincidence.
And so that's more like, I can't say I've like seen someone, the blind healed or anything like that, but it's more little coincidences and confirmations, that God is there, and in a way where I don't feel like he's saying, to me, it's like, don't base your faith on this, because that's not the way I normally operate.
Right. It was right.
It's like, because I feel like if I began my faith with some big, huge miracle, and then 30 years later, I've never seen another one since then, I think I would be like, did I really see that or not?
Especially, yeah, like 30 years later, and you're like,
not seen anything since then.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, it is one of the things. It's also interesting, too, to think that, like, man, and that goes back to omnipotence, but to be like, man, you really took some time out to, like, make this thing happen when there's billions of us.
Yeah.
There's literally billions of us on this planet, and he's really pulling strings and all, I mean, like, it's an interesting concept. It really is.
Like, I guess for me, the bigger I realize the universe is, as far as outer space and inner space, going both directions, the bigger I believe the Creator is. And so it's like, can God work in everyone's lives in different ways?
It's possible.
I think he can, if he created this huge universe,
If there is, if he had the power to do that, then very much so. But it's mind-boggling. That's all I'm saying. It's a thought that I can't. It's to try and understand what he could possibly be is as hard as trying to just understand how big this world, this universe is, and all of it. Like, it's on the same level.
I believe it's impossible.
It's just don't think a human mind could ever comprehend anything on that scale of vastness, whether you're religious or not.
And just so you know, like, as a Christian, the idea is we can't figure God out. God has to reveal himself to us. So, and that's where the Bible comes in. It's like, we don't know everything there is to know, but we know what we need to know.
Sure.
If God is in charge of reaching out to us rather than depending on us to reach out to him, then he shows us, and so through the pages of the Bible, we kind of like, he reveals his character and how he's worked in history. And, and so it takes the burden off of like having to, because the other part of it is, if everyone's left to their own imagination or their own intellect to say this is what God is like, then we get all the, the division, the different ideas.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, while that is true, it's also interesting too to think back and with Old Testament, New Testament, and all that. In actuality, those events transpired over. I haven't studied the Bible,
sure,
but in my head, it's a very small amount of time in the history of man.
Yeah.
Even up until the last. So, with the crucifixion of Christ and rising again and all that, I mean the last.
We're looking at about, I believe, about 2000 BC to like.
But I mean,
180.
even the New Testament, though, it only was in a lifetime, and not in in a very short lifetime at that. A lot happened in a very small
one generation,
amount of time. Half a generation. He was only in his 30s, but or something.
But then his disciples living on and writing about his life
again. True, but but not didn't carry on.
Right.
Yes, maybe another 100 years tops, and then
Yeah.
it turned into something different, or not something different, but
Yeah.
different things started happening with
Yeah.
governments of the time getting involved and changing things. And,
Yeah.
you know,
One of the things that really, though, does, just to give you a little, like, evidence why I believe, that the Bible is more, it's a library. It's like 66 different books written by some 40 different authors.
right.
And they're writing about the controversial topic of religion, you know,
Right.
and politics too, I guess.
Yeah.
And yet there's this narrative that's kind of like I don't want to say it's all the same, but it's more like a harmony, you know, like a song has harmony in it, and
Right.
so the more I read it, the more I'm convinced that no one could have come up with this and had so much harmony between all these different books about this, you know, the different controversial topics,
Right.
you know, and so. Because I know other religions have one text, you know, like Islam, it's basically the Quran. I know they've had a few, you know, like
Sure.
interpretations since then, but so the Quran, there's the Book of Mormon, one book, you know, and even within these books, there's contradictions, you know. It's like one person couldn't get it right, you know.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a strength, you know,
Yeah.
like to look at the Bible as a library. And when I talk to people that haven't really read the Bible,
Yeah.
I kind of try to challenge them, read the Bible like it's a
Right.
library. Like don't start, I mean, Genesis is important,
Sure.
but it quickly gets into like the genealogies of the Jewish people
Yeah.
and stuff, and
Yeah.
you kind of get lost. And so if
Yeah.
you're reading it like a novel, you won't get very far,
Okay,
you know.
okay.
But there are certain books that are much easier to read,
Right.
and they're meant to be read first, like the Gospels,
Okay.
you know. And so, like, if I'm walking into a regular library, if I'm not a good reader or I'm not familiar with all the books,
Yeah.
I might pick the easiest ones, and then as I gain,
Right.
I'll start to understand others, you know.
And that's valid. That does make a lot of sense. I mean, you wouldn't walk into a library and pick the first one with the title with the letter A and work your way
Right.
through it. So
Yeah. So I try to encourage people to do that.
yeah, that makes a lot
And
of sense.
if you, especially if you're only experienced, because most people nowadays, their opinion of the Bible is based on other people's opinions,
It's fair.
you know,
Yeah.
and it's maybe based on what they experienced as a child. And our brains are so, you know, different as adults than they were as children, and so our, you know, for example, and even the way it's presented, you know, like the whole thing of Noah's flood, you know, it's
Right.
like, oh, and the nice man put the nice animals on the flood, and you know, and it started to rain, and you know, and it's
Yeah.
like there's a lot of death and destruction going on
Yeah, there's a
outside,
lot of
and
terrible
what,
things
what does
happening.
this say about God, you know,
Right.
and things like that, and so we need to look at it with adult perspective
Yeah.
rather than
Yeah.
you
And
know,
I mean,
just
there's a
settle.
lot to be interpreted, like especially
Yeah.
as an adult. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's the other thing about it is I don't feel that the Bible is literal.
Yeah.
I feel like it's very much up for there's room for interpretation.
Yeah. There's different ways to read it.
Yeah.
For, you know, like Jesus' parables, for example, are meant to be not to be taken literally.
Yeah.
Like these are stories that maybe portray a point from everyday life, but these aren't actual events that happen, you know.
Right,
And then there's
right.
symbolism and
Right.
revelations. And,
Yes.
And so, yeah, I actually, like, I believe the Bible is God's word, but that doesn't mean I believe the other part of it is it's not all directed towards me.
Sure.
Like, originally, much of the Old Testament was directed towards the Jewish people.
Yes.
You know?
Well,
So-
it was their faith originally.
Yeah. So then you get, like, prosperity preachers who take those promises to the people of Israel in the wilderness
Yeah.
and apply them to our own life now
Yeah.
and say,
They,
God's gonna deliver, you know, like
Yeah.
all these promises,
Right.
and it's like, okay, we can learn the principle of God's generosity, but not necessarily that it's to be applied to us directly
Right.
here now for this purpose.
Well,
you know?
for me, and another reason why I said it's up for interpretation is all those books, whether the voice of God was speaking to some of them or all of them or any of them, when it's all said and done, a man wrote them, or a woman, or whatever. A human being wrote them.
Yeah.
And if anything, faith, Christianity, and even not, and then just observing in everyday life, I believe we are flawed. And I mean that in the sense of saying that we make mistakes.
Yeah.
It is our nature to make mistakes, because in my mind, if we didn't make mistakes, we wouldn't learn and we wouldn't grow and whatever else. So it's not to say that there's mistakes written, but it's not to say that there isn't.
It's written in a way people can understand. So they're not going to be talking about quantum physics and, and they might say things like the sun rose in the east, and instead of saying the earth turned and made it look like the sun was rising.
But they don't have to say that.
They don't have to. We know what it means.
Right.
So, so it's written in a, you can definitely see the influence of culture and personality. There's some of the letters of the New Testament, Paul is like greeting people like individually, and hey, say hi to so and so, and it's like
like it's almost a
not
sermon
realizing
on a hill
that the whole world's going to be reading his letter.
Probably never even occurred to him.
Right.
Never even occurred.
Right.
To him.
So I definitely see the human influence.
Yeah.
The way I look at it is everything in there is what God wanted to be in there, but not necessarily for all the same reason.
Sure.
So like people tell me, like the criticism of the Bible, well, there's genocide and rape, and it's like, okay,
but
does that say, like, when it's used in that context, is it approving of it?
No, it's usually it's demonstrate or whatever.
But like to show what happens when people disobey God, and show what happens when they obey Him, or to set an example of what not to do or what to do. So it's in there, but it's not necessarily.
It's a book of morality, is what it is. It's a book of lessons to learn from.
Yeah. So, I just hope I'd like to encourage you to give it another try. Go into the library and pick a few books and read them. The books of the Bible.
We'll definitely give it some thought. I might peruse through it sometime. But
I appreciate it. I want to respect your time. So
no problem. No, it was a good conversation.
Enjoyed the conversation.
I admit I don't usually do these sorts of things, so
I appreciate it. Yeah, you're very brave. If anyone asked me, I would have said no.
Yeah.
And then when I started asking people, I was so surprised how many people say they will.
That's great. I hope
guess the new day and age, people don't mind.
I hope you get some great stuff from
here's
this.
my and I usually I take something from the conversation and I try to, it usually inspires me to do a little writing.
Okay.
So I have a blog.
Okay.
And so it'll be right there.
Awesome.
And then I'll post it there.
Fantastic.
If everything works out with sound and everything.
Beautiful.
And then this is my number, and I would love to talk more.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you, Jeff.
All right, Steve.
It was a pleasure.
All right.
Good
Take
luck,
care.
and have a great rest of the day.
You too. Thanks.